flooding has intensified, wildfires have intensified, drought and impact of water supply reliability has intensified now. It's a $1 trillion market opportunity, number one. So the scale is there.
How can we be losing access to fresh water on a global level? It rains, it evaporates, it rains. It's a closed system. Well, as the climate warms, the atmosphere retains more water vapor, and many industrial products effectively take water out of the cycle. The water in the bottle might return to rain clouds, but the 35 litres of water used to make the bottle won't. They're trapped as long as the bottle exists. As a bottle, or tiny little pieces of microplastic going through your arteries straight to your brain. And more than these factors, agricultural demands have us pumping groundwater faster than it can replenish, so fast that rising sea levels are caused more by groundwater being extracted and running off into the oceans than glacial melting. But don't worry, I have good news. And by good news, I mean bad news. Do worry. Private equity, investment groups, and individual billionaires have seen this coming, and they're not going to let a good crisis go to waste. On the 25th of July 2025, scientists from Arizona State University, Flame University, California Institute of Technology, and elsewhere published a study called Unprecedented Continental Drying, Shrinking Freshwater Availability, and Increasing Land Contributions to Sea Level Rise. The paper states that Earth's continents have lost an unprecedented volume of terrestrial groundwater. All of the ice, snow, surface water, canopy water, soil moisture, and groundwater stored on land since 2002. Since 2002, 101 countries, representing 3/4 of the human population, have been losing fresh water faster than it replenishes. Dry areas are becoming drier faster than wet areas are becoming wetter, and the atmosphere is retaining more water.
In a warming climate, one of the most fundamental things that happens, the ability of the atmosphere to hold water vapor increases exponentially, about 7% per degree centigrade or 3 to 4% per degree Fahrenheit of warming.
The study, in very frank terms, argues that this situation is critical. They even call it dire. At present, overpumping groundwater is the largest contributor to rates of TWS decline in drying regions, significantly amplifying the impacts of increasing temperature, aridification, and extreme drought events. At the same time, the UN reports that as of 2024, 3.6 billion people worldwide face inadequate access to water at least 1 month per year. By 2050, that number will probably be 5 billion. As the world population continues to grow and use more fresh water for industry and agriculture, the amount of water per capita is shrinking.
Intensive agricultural practices had taken their toll on both the Santa Ana River and groundwater supplies. Most of the river flows had been diverted by upstream farmers. Decreasing river supplies downstream also reduced natural percolation in the groundwater aquifers. Orange County wells had to be dug deeper in order to reach the rapidly dropping water table. Extensive pumping of coastal groundwater supplies resulted in seawater intrusion.
Aquifers can take centuries, even millennia, to refill. They're a bit like a bucket being refilled by a dripping tap. You can use as much water in the bucket as fast as you like. You can take water from the bucket and put it into a different bucket, but you can't do anything to make the dripping, the recharging of the water in the bucket, any faster. The issue isn't so much that the bucket is or isn't empty, it's the refill rate. It's making a garden so big that the whole bucket can water it today, but it will only be a third full tomorrow. About 30% of groundwater used for irrigation in the US comes from the Ogallala Aquifer, under 8 US states. It recharges as much as 15 centimeters a year, but only as much as that in some places. It's been depleted by as much as 10 times that, 1.5 meters yearly, in some places, particularly those parts of the aquifer serving industrial farmland, and overall it is being depleted. The table has dropped an average of 28 feet, or about 8.5 meters, since the mid-21st century. If it were to be completely drained, it would take about 6,000 years to refill, assuming it wasn't still pumped during that time. In some places in Texas, the cost of irrigation, of either buying in water or deepening wells, is leading farmers to leave areas fallow or move away from irrigation. Ogallala, like other aquifers, is tapped deeper and pumped faster in times of drought, and the more it depletes, the more expensive it is to drill deeper, and the more its shallower areas dry out.
So basically the water situation that we're in currently is we've been drawing from this aquifer, this source of water, for several decades now, and now we're down to the very bottom.
The Guarani Aquifer in South America is, like the Ogallala, one of the largest in the world. By some estimates, it is the largest. As of 2022, its recharge rate comfortably outmatched its rate of discharge as a whole. But as of 2024, withdrawals in 80% of its area are considered unsustainable. So even though as a whole Guarani is not depleting, the parts of it being pumped by cities is. Both the Guarani and Ogallala aquifers contain some amount of fossil water, that is, water from thousands of years ago when the climate was different, and so is not going to be replenished. The Nubian Sandstone Aquifer is the largest fossil water aquifer in the world. Some parts of it get recharged, much from seepage from the Nile, but many parts of it do not. The water in the ground is there from before North Africa's current climate, between 100,000 and 1 million years ago, when it was much greener and wetter. Once that water is pumped, it is not returning to the aquifer. Extraction rates there are doubling every 50 years, at which rate it will be completely dry in 350 years, and that water will be gone from there forever. But considering how other sources of groundwater and fresh water as a whole are becoming more and more politically and economically important, it's not a fantasy to suggest extraction could increase far quicker. And two, as it depletes, it becomes economically less efficient to pump its water. The depletion of aquifers is occurring over the globe, and so too is their pollution.
The chemicals that are being applied on the surface of the field are going to be able to quickly reach groundwater. Only around 5% of what they actually spray makes it into the plant, and then that means that all of the rest could potentially move elsewhere.
A study published in 2020 found that in the US, 41% of the groundwater used for public consumption that was tested contained either pesticides, pesticide degradates, or both. Strain on freshwater is not just constrained to groundwater, although groundwater is disappearing 2.4 times faster than surface water, according to Arizona State University. For example, the Colorado River has lost 20% of its flow over the last century, with the loss accelerating in the last 2 decades. The Colorado Basin has lost about 28 million acre-feet of groundwater in the last 20 years, about the equivalent to Lake Mead if it were full, with the Nile's flow decreasing due to pumping, irrigation, and climate change, and a new Ethiopian dam built upriver, and and a growing population, in July 2025, Egypt's foreign minister called water scarcity his country's biggest existential threat. In India, the stream flows of both the Ganges and Brahmaputra rivers have been trending down due again to irrigation and a decline in runoff from Himalayan glaciers. In 2018, Abhijit Mukherjee, associate professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, told Monga Bay, "In the last 3 decades, we have seen the groundwater input to the Ganges River decline by 50% during summer. This decline could go up to 75% compared to the scenario in the 1970s in the summer months. India uses groundwater for 60% of its irrigation and faces an escalating problem as the planet continues to warm."
What can we do with this? We have cattle that need to drink as well. This is why farmers are committing suicide.
Over 300 farmers have already committed suicide this year in Maharashtra because of the drought. Jyoti's father took his own life just 4 days ago.
My father was facing so many problems and nothing could help him. Not nature, not the farm, nor the villagers. How can you farm without water? Where are we supposed to get water from? All we have known is drought for the past 3 years.
There is no grass for the farm animals, even people can't eat. This year we have nothing.
This year, none of the villagers sowed grain, knowing they would have no way of irrigating.
At the end of July 2025, CNN reported that Tehran could be weeks away from taps running dry for large parts of the city. Authorities there have already reduced water pressure so much that residents in high-rises are often unable to get water in their apartments. China is also expressing worsening water stress, especially in its north. Overall, its available groundwater has decreased by more than 25% since 2012, according to CEIC data, and its rapid transformation of marshlands into industrial farms in its northern provinces has limited the ability of the ground to absorb rainwater and replenish aquifers. In China, California, Mexico, Iran, and elsewhere, sinkholes and land subsidence hint at draining water tables collapsing under their own weight. A study from Virginia Tech from May 2025 warns that at least part of all of the 28 most populous cities in the US are sinking to some degree, mainly due to groundwater depletion. In 25 cities, 65% of the city's areas are sinking. In Chicago, New York, Detroit, and others, 98% of those cities' areas are sinking. Tehran is sinking by up to 25 centimeters or 10 inches every year. So where does all the water go? What do we use it for? Well, the stats can be a bit tricky because there's a difference between withdrawal and consumption and use. And with some stats, it feels like that distinction isn't always clear, and some publications use consumption and use interchangeably. For example, in 2015, the US was withdrawing and using 322 billion gallons of water per day, or 1.2 trillion liters. The biggest single user of all this water was thermoelectric power plants, using about 41% of that 1.2 trillion liters. But only 3% of water used by power plants was consumed, water drawn from a source without a return, or only a small portion of return. It's worth noting that, even though power plants consume far less water than they use, they do generate thermal pollution that can drastically change the nature of the sources they take from and return to, rivers and lakes. Although in the US irrigation uses less water than thermoelectric power plants, a far bigger consumer is irrigation. When pumping groundwater to irrigate a field, Some of the water runs off into a river and then the sea, and some of it evaporates, later becoming rain in a different region, not returning to its aquifer of origin. That's consumption. In these stats, irrigation uses less water than power plants use, but of all the water the US consumes, 80 to 90% is consumed by agriculture, where up to 62% of the water used is consumed, essentially spent. In 2015, in the US, 84 billion gallons of groundwater were being withdrawn every day, and 70% of that was going to irrigation. So, up to 43% of groundwater in the US is being consumed, as in, it's not coming back. Generally, the higher income of a nation, the less water is used in agriculture, and the more it uses for industry. It's quite difficult to differentiate use and consumption of water by specific sectors, but the strain on aquifers is the clearest metric we have and is undeniable. Things like data centers may use millions of gallons of water, but that doesn't mean they're consuming all that water, depending on where they are and their setup. Individual products are easier to measure in terms of water footprint, how much water has been consumed or polluted in their creation. According to Water Footprint Calculator, the manufacturing of a car has a water footprint of 52 to 83,000 litres of water. Leather shoes, 8,000 litres. A cotton t-shirt, 2,720 litres.
Welcome to Celine Dion's jaw-dropping estate on Jupiter Island. Celine built her own private ocean in the backyard. Much of the almost 6-acre compound is an aquatic paradise. It's a 460,000-gallon dream come true for kids. That includes a Titanic-sized private water park with 2 slides that spill into a flowing river.
The wealthy use more than their fair share of water. Surprise, surfucking-prise. In Cape Town, the richest 14% use 51% of domestic water. Cape Town, like Tehran, teeters on a water emergency. By virtue of water being used for consumer products, the more stuff someone has, the more water they use, even if it's not coming out of the tap in their home. But the biggest user, globally, is agriculture. Globally, around 70% of freshwater is used for agriculture, and about 41% of water used in agriculture is for livestock feed. Meat is generally quite water inefficient in terms of kilograms and calories. It takes 2,700 litres, more than 700 gallons, to produce 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds of beef. But it's not just beef that's water hungry. Cheese uses more water by weight and calorie count. Rice uses almost 250 litres per kilogram. It takes about 300 litres of water to make 1 litre of barley beer, if you include growing the barley, transport, brewing, and packaging. People switching to just eating root vegetables and peas would save a lot of water, until those savings are just being spent sustaining a larger population. Get your Soylent Yellow. So do we want 10 billion people, or do we want beef? Whether we like it or not, it is a finite planet, which brings me to the people who see the pressure on the water supply and seek to profit from it. Heroes they are. Champions.
You can now add planet Earth's most plentiful natural resource to the list of things that investors can trade. Water began trading on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange today.
In December of 2020, Wall Street began trading water futures as a commodity for the first time. Commodities are raw goods that come from the earth. They include hard commodities, things that have to be mined or extracted, like gold, oil, natural gas, and soft commodities, like crops and farm animals. Commodities futures are derivative contracts, where the purchaser agrees to buy or sell a certain amount of a commodity at a specific price on a specific date in the future. They are financial instruments where the value depends on the value of another asset. If that sounds familiar, it's because derivatives were a major cause of the 2008 financial crisis. When used speculatively, they're basically a method of investors gambling on the future price of an asset. Warren Buffett has called them financial weapons of mass destruction. And now, Wall Street is investing in water futures, essentially betting that the future prices of water will increase dramatically due to increased scarcity. It seems like a good bet. On the first day of trading water futures on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, there were $1.1 billion in contracts tied to the price of water in California. So Wall Street sees the incoming water crisis and is looking to profit from it, and this has expanded to financial firms buying up land across the United States for the purpose of acquiring water rights. One firm, a New York hedge fund and private equity investor called Water Asset Management, has focused on buying farmland near the Colorado River to profit from declining freshwater supplies. This isn't a conspiracy or anything, they aren't hiding this. I mean, a bit. Their website says, "Water is essential to life, health, and the environment. Water investments provide the opportunity to generate returns that exceed the market while simultaneously delivering measurable positive impact. WAM's core belief is that scarce clean water is this century's defining resource." It goes on to say, "Climate change is intensifying drought, flood, and wildfire at unprecedented rates, threatening the viability of agriculture, businesses, and communities. The water industry is uniquely positioned to offer innovative solutions to organizations and people in need of daily sustainable water supply. The reality of climate change provides numerous problem-solving and investment opportunities to water industry stakeholders." You can practically taste the dynamicism. Here's the president and co-founder of WAM, Matt DeSerio, talking about private equity water investment in 2020, the same year water futures trading began.
There's no better set of rules of law and regulatory regime around water, which is obviously really important for any very long duration asset, than we have here in the US. So when you combine the risk-adjusted return potential with the scale of the opportunity, it's superior here in the US compared with India. Very difficult place to invest, let alone doing it on a private equity basis. I mean, building a solar plant today doesn't have any impact immediately on carbon emissions for the future. Whereas water is dealing with the world we have now, like it or not. Flooding has intensified, wildfires have intensified, drought and impact to water supply reliability has intensified now. We all know that, we can see that now. And investing in water companies and water assets really is immediate climate adaptation. It's a $1 trillion market opportunity.
It seems that Wall Street, who have long profited from industries that helped cause climate change, are now seeking to profit from its effects. Investment firms have, over the last 20 years or so, purchased thousands of acres of farmland in the western United States, land that comes with water rights, with plans to hold that land as droughts and water scarcity increase, then sell the water back to the public at a profit, and generally keep the land and sell the water rights only. One of the biggest targets has been the Colorado River, which supplies water to 40 million people and 5.5 million acres of irrigated farmland across 7 states. Major cities like Denver, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Phoenix depend on the river for water, and the Colorado River Basin is in crisis. As well as its accelerating rate of depletion, the region is experiencing its worst mega drought in 1,200 years. The situation is especially dire for the lower Colorado River Basin, including Arizona, California, and Nevada. A study from May of 2025 determines that 71% of water loss in the basin is from overpumping of groundwater, and estimates that groundwater in the Phoenix area will be completely depleted by the end of this century. So, it's the perfect place for investors like Water Asset Management to capitalize on the crisis. WAM is one of the biggest firms doing this, buying land and water rights in Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, and Texas.
Water Asset Management is a Wall Street investment firm with offices inside this building in New York City. CBS News has learned that in the past 5 years, the company has bought at least $20 million worth of land in western Colorado.
I don't think they want much with the land. It's the water, right?
Andy Mueller is general manager of the Colorado River District, created by the state to protect its share of Colorado River water.
Water in Colorado, water in the West is your future. Without water, you have no future.
Mueller says Water Asset Management has acquired at least 2,500 acres of land for the water rights that come with it. He calls them speculators, betting that as the West gets drier, those with water rights will get richer.
Mueller also spoke to CNN, saying that it's difficult to track the amount of land these investment groups have purchased because they use various subsidiary companies to do it. CNN searched property records in the area and didn't find any under the name Water Asset Management, but did find a variety of companies with names like WPI Hewlett Farm AZ LLC and WPI IIGV6 Farm Co. LLC, which all shared the same mailing address as Water Asset Management's headquarters in New York City. If you think you're doing something good, you don't typically hide it with shell companies. And this is happening throughout the western United States. Water Asset Management owns at least 3,000 acres in Colorado's Grand Valley, and at least 18,000 acres in Arizona. These are just some of the ones that we know about. Again, they're hiding how much they've bought by doing it through subsidiary companies. The defense offered by Water Asset Management is predictable. Look, water is an increasingly scarce resource and we're doing a public good. People need water and we're going to sell it to them. We'll be more efficient than the government. And I guess that's true if by more efficient you mean poor local communities that can't afford the inflated prices won't get the water as it's diverted to distant, wealthier suburbs. Another firm called Greenstone Management Partners, a subsidiary of the financial conglomerate MassMutual, bought 500 acres of land in the small town of Cibola in Arizona in 2013 and 14. Like Water Asset Management, Greenstone used a subsidiary company called GSC Farm LLC to disguise who was buying the land. Greenstone had at least 25 of these subsidiary companies across Arizona and other states in 2023, when the story was first reported. The land in Cibola came with the rights to 2,000 acre-feet of water, about 650 million gallons per year. They bought the land for just under $10 million in 2013 and 14. They rented some of the land to a farmer at first, but only briefly, and they didn't use the land for anything themselves. A few years later, in 2018, they sold the water rights to Queen Creek, a suburb of Phoenix, 200 miles away, for $24 million. This, in a nutshell, is how this investment works. Buy up cheap agricultural land that includes water rights. Sit on it for a few years as droughts get worse and water levels drop even more, then sell the water back to the public, those who can afford it. In Cibola, Arizona, where the water comes from, the average household income is about $13,000 per year. In Queen Creek, where they sold the water, it's $162,000 per year. In effect, taking water from poor towns and diverting it to more wealthy towns. I would guess that this is a trend we're going to see more and more of, and not just in the US. A major concern is that these firms are taking advantage of taxpayer money. Yes, by overcharging communities for water, but also more directly. In 2023, the federal government started a pilot program for conserving water during droughts, where they paid states in the Colorado River Basin $125 million to rent land from farmers and not grow anything on it, essentially paying farmers to fallow their fields for the purpose of conserving water. And local farmers believe these investment firms are taking advantage of the program, receiving federal money to not grow anything when they never planned to grow anything on the land. They're just sitting on it until it's time to sell the water back to the public. Kerry Donovan, a rancher and former state senator in Colorado, told CNN, "That's where I think we start to see this investment speculation, when these outside landholders get big dollars to grow nothing. One day, they'll sell that water off, which means the land would go out of agricultural production, and they'll sell when the water is worth the most, which is when we have the least of it. Whether any of these companies are doing that right now, taking federal money to grow nothing, is yet to be seen. There are no reports as of yet." Taking all of this together, I would not be shocked to discover in the near future something like this. 1. Wall Street firm invests in water futures, betting on the price of water going up. 2. Firm buys a shitload of land in drought-ridden areas. 3. Doesn't do anything with the water for several years, increasing its scarcity even more. And 4. Profiting twice from both selling the water, which is now more expensive, and also from betting on the water being more expensive. Isn't there something, I don't know what the word would be, immoral about betting on a commodity becoming more expensive when you can directly cause it to be more expensive? I don't know, that's just me.
Governor Spencer Coss is asking Utahns to join him in faith. He's declared this Sunday as a day of fasting and prayer for rain.
Church leaders hope divine intervention will help bring the much-needed rain and snow.
Pray for rain. But, pray for rain.
The last time we prayed for rain, it rained.
And so here we are, in the half-mast nation and beyond, where droughts are becoming so severe, people are encouraged to pray for rain by their lawmakers, or whilst the wealthiest people in America, in the world, take the water with the intent to sell it back to us when we are most desperate and will pay anything for it. Pray for rain. It turns out our gods are on Wall Street, and they can't make it rain. Thanks for watching. See you next time. I have a Patreon, a Blue Sky, a Zitter. It's all great. Take care. Bye-bye. Heroes they are. Champions. In fact, if there was a lady who had a newborn baby and Luigi came in and he was like, "Oh, should I shoot the water profiteers or the lady and the baby?" I'd be like, "God, Luigi, shoot the lady and the baby. These people are precious." And Luigi would be like, "Good point, George," and we'd bump fists. Then I'd arrest him, right? I'd stop it and I'd arrest him, right? And Trump would be like, "Good boy." I'm like, "Thanks, Dad."